Welcome to Ric's Corner. The man, the myth, the legend. Now on with the show.
Okay. Hey guys, Pete Koch here. Surprise guest host on Ric's Corner. Ric has been kind enough to allow me to, my idea, but to flip the tables a little bit. Hey Ric, how you been?
Pretty good compared to yesterday.
Well, it's good to see you. Look well.
Thank you.
I've been bugging Ric about this for some time. I've been a guest. You might recognize me. I've been on his show 3 or 4 times. I love it to death. Been watching Ric's show for years and years, long before I even met him. I knew a lot about him. But here's my chance at that, because I've had thoughts for a long, long time. You do a brilliant job of getting the best, most interesting facts and stories and anecdotes from your guests. But I thought, why not? I've got these questions about you.
Okay.
So, just a little bit. You can run through this stuff kind of fast, but if I just went back to the beginning,
of what?
The beginning.
When I was born.
Not quite the beginning of time, but the beginning of you.
Yes.
So where are you from, Ric?
Yes, I'm from West Virginia.
Okay.
People ask me that. I always say I'm from Virginia originally. I was born in Bakersfield in 1944.
Yeah.
So,
what kind of upbringing did you have? What did your folks do?
my mom and dad had a store on Chester Avenue. It was a children's furniture and clothing store that my dad went to school to become a lawyer. Met my mom at the beach in Santa Monica. They got married. He thought he was going to become a lawyer, and at that time he was working for a funeral home embalming bodies, if you can imagine that. So he tells stories about one body rolling down the hill that turned all black and bruised up, and they put it back up. My mom would wait in the lobby for him with all these dead bodies in another room, but she hung in there and they went out. So they got married. They decided to move to Bakersfield because being a small town back in the 40s, it was like a good chance to have your own kind of business and make some money. He did very, very well. He became the Chamber of Commerce president, and they had a good life. And then I was born in 44. I went to an elementary school there, which was totally different than it is today. It's just a community. It was really a community. There was very little crime. You could leave your front doors open at night, and it was a good place to grow up and have a lot of friends. And then as I got into junior high and high school, I started playing in a rock band, guitar, and then I had a group that we played with every Friday and Saturday night for all the dances after school. A lot of people might not remember this, but high schools back then had basketball games and football games, and afterwards in the cafeteria they'd have a dance. Not DJs, but bands. And there were 3 bands in town, but we were the number 1. And I was just telling somebody the other day, even back then in the late 50s, 60s, I'd be making $15, $20, $25 a night. Now it doesn't sound like much, but back then you could get gas for 17 cents a gallon, you could get a burger for 15 cents, a movie was a quarter, Coke was a dime, so you could go on a date and spend $4 and you're living large.
Wow. Sounds like Bakersfield was kind of a cool place to grow up.
It was like the movie American Graffiti.
I know, I love it.
Yeah, like that. You know, you had your cruise night down the main Chester Avenue to Andre's Drive-In, to Missioner's Drive-In, to Stan's Drive-In, and you'd cruise and do this loop and you'd pick up girls and you get to meet people on the side of the street. Like the movie, just like American Graffiti. And this is how you made your dates, and everybody was open to meeting from all the different high schools. And being in the band and played at all the different schools, I knew everybody at every school. So it made life kind of fun.
What was it sounds like a place you could have lived and stayed. So something was you said, I need to get out of this town, and I guess Los Angeles was the next stop.
I thought I turned my phone off. I guess I didn't. It was okay during high school and playing, and then we had a deal. We played the Hollywood Bowl and Gazzarri's and the Battle of Bands at the Palladium, and we won. So I got a deal. I got a deal with Capitol Records. So
hold it. You moved to LA with a rock band. The boys.
No. This was in Bakersfield. This was while I was still in Bakersfield.
Oh.
We got a deal. We entered the Battle of the Bands down here in LA.
So you're making this for folks that don't know. It's about a 2.5 hour drive.
It's actually an hour and 30 minutes.
Okay.
Now it's even less since the freeways go straight through. But we met a lot of people, and we got a deal with Capitol Records, and I made some good friends down here and playing at the Hollywood Bowl and all that was fun. And I thought, well, maybe this is going to be my forte. Maybe this is what I'm going to do with my life. I went into the Army, I got out, my father passed away, I was 18, And he introduced me to wrestling. He used to take me on Thursday nights to the arena, and I'd watch all these older guys, and I thought, man, this looks like fun, but never thought about doing it. So, meantime, my mom moved in with my grandmother. I stayed with her, and then in '65, I started training for wrestling at the Olympic Auditorium, driving back and forth in Bakersfield 5 days a week. 2 hours in the gym there, 2 hours at the gym at home.
So the idea of being a rock star was slipping away a little bit, being replaced by being a wrestling star?
Well, it had changed. You know, the rock music had changed to this acid rock, which was completely nuts. I played songs like Chet Atkins and Les Paul and people like that, and current rock groups, which were big back then, but this other crazy stuff I couldn't get behind. I didn't really enjoy it. So I kept my guitar. I mean, I still have my 57 Jazzmaster. It's worth a lot of money nowadays. I keep everything. And I decided to take up the wrestling because I had competed in a couple of bodybuilding shows. And I was in really good shape. And these wrestlers would come to town on Thursday nights and train at the YMCA where I worked out. And back then the gyms were nothing. Broken cables, bent bars and all that. But I still got a good workout. So I came down here and I met Johnny Mae Young, who was a women's champion. She passed away a few years ago in her late 80s and still in the ring. And she took a look at me and she says, man, I can make some money with you. If this is what you want to do, let's do it. So she threw me around here and there. My mom was waiting outside the Olympic and I came out all full of mat burn. She says, okay, are we done? Can we go home? I said, I'm going to take you to lunch, but I got to be back tomorrow because I got to work out. She said, oh, you're going to do this? I said, I'm going to do it. I mean, I got to do something. That was in 1965. So I did that and I started getting booked at the arenas and working in the gym in Bakersfield. And around 1969, she says, you need to move out of Bakersfield. There's no future here for you at all.
So your day job there for a few years was you were running a gym?
Well, I worked at the bank for a year, which I didn't like. And then I ran a gym. Yeah, I ran a gym, and it allowed me to work out and still wrestle at night.
And learn the business, right?
Yeah.
Serve
You know what I didn't like about working at the gym was it was like a Jack LaLanne type club, and they had the same program for everybody, 2 sets of all these things. And the owner, Joe Barata, who was a bodybuilder, would be flying around his airplane to all of his gyms, and he'd want me to rake in traffic and make money. I said, you can't make any money out here in the street where you are unless you put up roadblocks. I said, I'm not a salesman. I'm not going to go out and round people up. But once I did get them around, then he wanted me to put them all in the same program. Well, you know you can't do that. So people were asking me, what can I do to build this and build that? And I kept changing programs. He said, oh, you can't do that. That's not right. But it is right.
You're right. And people are still trying to sell prepackaged programs on social media in particular. It's the same hustle. It makes it very, very cheap for people. But even that little bit of money you spend on these prepackaged programs, you're not going to get any place. So
no. Well, I knew all the guys that came to the gym and they'd work out with me, and they were getting results off my program. And you had a lady managing the club who was much older than me, and it's on the phone all day with her boyfriend, not doing anything in the gym. You need just to clean the plates. Don't stand around and do nothing. So I finally told him, you know what, I quit.
That was that. But that was the engine that kind of pushed you towards.
Well,
LA.
wait, I quit for a week.
Oh.
Then he called me back. He says, if I give you her job and a raise, will you come back? I said, okay. So I came back, and then I started wrestling up in Fresno and in Bakersfield and down here in LA and keeping my nights busy. And I told him I certain nights I can't work. And then my mom says, what are you going to do? You need to move. So I applied for a job in 1969 for Kellogg's cereal. Now, I was looking at some of the sales companies. You had Gillette, you had Kimberly-Clark, and you had Kellogg's. And for a lot of you don't know that, they had sales jobs where you would call on supermarkets. They'd give you a company car, $1,000 a month, and a charge card for food and gas. Well, how can you go wrong, right?
Yeah.
So I interviewed for the job, and I got hired, and they pulled me down to Torrance. And I went to work down there calling on all the beach communities like Manhattan Beach and all.
So that was when you officially moved to LA.
That's when I officially moved to LA, and I met new people here. I trained at Bill Pearl's gym in Inglewood, and Bill was always like a mentor to me. He was just something else. Hardcore gym in the middle of Watts.
But these towns, so Torrance, so the folks that don't know, Torrance and Watts are like South LA.
South LA, yeah.
Yeah.
South Central.
Yeah, South Central. So that's where you started.
I kind of fit in. I could talk the language, and I kind of fit in. I met really good guys. And I called the wrestling office. I was working for Kellogg's, and they didn't like the fact that I was working out and going to wrestle again. They're very structured people, corporation. I go to these big business conventions.
Wanted you all in with their product.
They take you to Texas to a big meeting for 3 days, and I'm throwing all my pills on the table. And the manager of the company says, "What are those, drugs?" I said, "Yeah, they're drugs. You got B vitamins, you got amino acids, you got liver tablets. Why do you have to take all that?" I said, "So that I don't look like you." And I said, "This is what I do." He said, "Well, I think you should forget about the gym and spend more time thinking about Kellogg's." I said, "What's to think about cereal? You either eat it or you don't." So it lasted about a year and a half, and they didn't like my attitude, and I didn't care. I didn't want to be there. So I turned the car back and I quit. And I moved to Santa Monica, where I always wanted to live, right by where you are now, at 10th and Wilshire.
Yep. Yeah.
$135 a month. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
I know.
To live 10 blocks from the beach.
10 blocks to the beach, a few blocks from Zookie's Deli where everybody hung out. And I switched from Pearl's gym over to Gold's.
It was there. Where was when did the synergy start to happen? Was it with Joe Gold? Was it obviously Arnold? How did the friendships develop in the synergy there?
I was just talking about somebody about that today because they were saying you guys were the cusp of bodybuilding. You put it on the map and made it what it is. And I said, well, I came from Bakersfield not ever realizing that I'd be one of those guys because I was looking at the magazines. And I walked in the back door. Do you remember the old gym with the back door?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, and I ran into Arnold and Draper and Franco and these guys, and all became friends and started working a chest workout. And what are you doing tomorrow? And then Arnold would come by in the morning and honk about 8:15. Let's go to the gym. This BMW. And then we stop at Zookie's and eat and go train, and then we all became friends. Well, all of us, we just all hung out together. It was like being back in high school, your senior year, where you had all your buddies.
Yeah.
And this is what it was like then. It wasn't like today. We just did everything together. Joe didn't have music in the gym. There were no headsets. There was no cardio equipment. There was one water fountain. There was one shower for everybody, including women. And this is how it worked. And we had a good time. And then on the weekends, and you know where the marina is, you had Donkin's and the Captain's Wharf and all these places. You go down on Friday, Saturday nights, and all the girls from the valley would come there to meet guys. Yeah. So this is how we did it. And they never saw bodybuilders. They thought, these guys are freaks.
Let's just to get into the details just a little bit. When this formative time in your life, Arnold's time, you were his training partner for several years. And take us through just a typical day. Was it what kind of a split? How many times a week was he training? Strength training, cardio? Did you eat together? Supplements? What was that like? Just a snapshot.
Well, it's not as people think. He didn't spend 8 hours a day in the gym, even though some of his books he said he did. We'd get to the gym around 9 and train till maybe 10:30.
9 to 10:30.
Yeah,
okay.
Maybe quarter to 11, somewhere around that time. And we would split it up. We'd do chest and back on one day.
Okay.
And sometimes supersets like bench presses and chin ups because they were right close together. Seated lat pulls with inclined dumbbells, cable crossovers with one arm rows. And you would do split the body parts like that because you work opposing muscle groups.
Mm-hmm.
Chest and back are opposing and they work real well together. And then we do some abs and then we go down to maybe the Jamaica Bay Inn in the marina and have lunch and sit by the pool.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe go back in the late afternoon and do calves and abs, but nothing more than that. During the day, we'd lay on the beach, and he'd be doing stuff with Weeder. I'd have an audition for a commercial, and then by 4 or 5 o'clock, I had to leave to go wrestle in one of the towns. So that was my income. When I wasn't, you know how it is with commercials, you get residuals, and then you can apply for unemployment. So I'd wrestle at night, I'd get my residuals that week. Next week, I'd get unemployment because I didn't get paid residuals, and I would rotate it. So you have residuals, unemployment, and wrestling, all three. And it worked out pretty well. And then I did the Gold's Gym logo and I did some other t-shirts I had in Joe Weider's magazine. Joe would come in on Sundays and take us all to lunch and train. I remember Joe coming into the gym and he picked the 65-pound dumbbells and started curling. This guy was strong. So he says, why don't you put the ad in my magazine, Rick? You make more money. I said, because I can't afford $1,000 a month for a page. I just can't do it. I did muscle and fitness, or muscular strength and health and Ironman. So he says, look, I'll give you the free page if you just post for my products. Okay, he says, you'll make money. Sure enough, boy, those orders came in. There was no internet. I get them in the mail, checks and cash. Doing $80,000 a year, selling t-shirts. And then I bought this house, and out there I made my self-tuning stuff. Started printing shirts, packaging them, putting them to the post office, sending them out, and keeping stock and going around. It's a full-time job. And it worked out good. But I learned a lot down there.
Yeah, so there is a snapshot, and I appreciate that. So you had guys like... Arnold was that sort of the top of the pyramid guy, that peak guy, but he had friends and training partners around him, like yourself, like Franco, and the guys that would drift in and out of that circle, Dave Draper, some guys that lived in different towns from time to time. And people were all working their side hustle, as we would say now. And it's interesting to know what you were doing. Everyone knows what Arnold was doing. He was getting into the movie star business.
Yeah.
But what was Franco Colombo brilliantly, right? Takes himself back to school and becomes a chiropractor. Great guest on your show. And then we were just talking earlier. Dave Draper is an absolute genius furniture maker.
Yeah.
And that was, who knew, right?
Yeah.
Absolute brilliant high-end furniture he's producing with his time. And then there's you you've jumped, kind of moved around from music to professional wrestling to being an artist, an entrepreneur, putting your logos and your artwork onto apparel so that you can monetize that.
Yeah, exactly.
What's next?
Well, the thing was that we had a big group of people. You had Arnold, Franco, Draper, me, Columbo, Waller, Zane, Ken Sprague, who owned the gym later on, Roger Callard, Kent Keene, Bob Birdsong, and all these main guys. And then Joe Gold had another group of friends that surrounded us, which he called the second team, meaning that those were the second team players. Those are the guys that hung around bodybuilding but didn't compete. A lot of them looked good though, and they were all part of the circuit. We were all friends, all of us. It's a family. Some of the guys were pros and some of the guys just wanted to work out, but we all hung together. So a lot of the guys would come out here from, I don't know why, everybody always came from Michigan. I think they evacuated the state. And they come in groups of threes and they get jobs down the marina as bouncers because it was extra cash. Or they go to the studios and work as a grip or whatever they could do. And then one guy would find a girlfriend. He'd break away from the group of three and live with a girl for a while. The other two would go back. Then the guy with the girlfriend would break up and he'd move back. Then three more guys would come out there. I used to laugh at this. You could see the rotation of three people at a time coming in and out of the gym, all from Michigan. Pretty much, and that's how it worked. But there was plenty of work. There was a payphone on the wall, and it would ring, and 9 times out of 10, Zabel wouldn't answer it, and I would. And we need some bodybuilders for a show for Johnny Carson. We need them for Flip Wilson. CBS is running a special. We need some guys down for this, and I'd round people up, and we go down and work. And it was all union stuff, so we joined SAG. In fact, I got a call. We were all at the beach one day, and this company called Haboosh hired a bunch of us to do a Chevy commercial called Heavy Chevy. And we had to go down to the beach and they give us haircuts and we had to lift this Chevy in the air. It was on a cable and there was a little skinny guy supposed to be really strong, but he was the weak guy, but he lifted the car. And so we got $1,000 and that enabled us to join SAG. Joining Screen Actors Guild is a plus because then you can get work. If you're not a member, it's hard to get work. So we did that and then some of us got work in this. Roger Callard and I did Charlie's Angels, Mr. Galaxy, then The Fall Guy, then Riptide, and then I did The Hulk. The Middle Transformation, which ran for a long time. I mean, it just went on and on and on. And to this day, I still get royalties off all those old shows. Sometimes it's only $1, but and then sometimes it's not. But the rest of the guys, they had a hard time finding work. It wasn't always easy. Odd jobs, driving trucks, whatever they could do, they do. And they just kind of get by with 3 people renting.
And the common thread was the bodybuilding, was Gold's Gym. Was the friendships, the culture, the conversation.
Yeah, what I've learned over the years, and I told somebody this the other day, from being a wrestler and being a bodybuilder, when I would go around to different cities and wrestle, I'd always find a gym to go to. And because we came from Gold's and because we were part of that group, everybody wanted to be friends with you. And so you'd find good restaurants, you'd make good friends. In every city that I went, since they knew that was what we did, we'd get turned on to really good stuff and have a great time. There's a camaraderie that, it's like a family. Oh, you're part of Gold's, you're working out, you do this, you do that. Oh, come with us, we'll take care of you. Happened everywhere. It's just really a pleasure.
I don't think things are that different now because we are really lucky that we are part of something that Joe Gold gets a lot of credit for this, and Joe Weider, the synergy that I think I don't know if it was direct or indirectly they built together. Arnold came along at the right time for not only himself, but all boats rise, everybody sort of lifted at that same time. So what do we have left is we don't have physically Joe Gold and Joe Weider anymore, but we have the Gold's Gym legacy. I train at the Mecca of bodybuilding there, the big Gold's Gym down in Venice. You're at probably the second most famous Gold's Gym, I suppose, in North Hollywood. And there's still some there's still special places with special memories, and people still gather there to pursue excellence, but also just to connect.
Well, what people don't understand when I talk to people, especially the younger crowd, you know who Joe Gold is? No, I never heard of him. Well, if there was no Joe Gold, there's no Gold's Gym today. If there were none of us guys that Joe Weider used to photograph in the gym and on his magazine worldwide, it wouldn't be what it is today.
Right.
There's about a dozen or two of us that were in all the magazines. So people from all over the world say, look at the guys that train at Gold's, that must be the Mecca, that's where we want to go, which was just a hole in the wall. It wasn't a very big place, but it brought everybody out and it made it famous. And so Joe Weider actually made it famous. Joe Gold sold the gym, and I think it was 1970, 71, and he was a merchant marine, and he went out to sea, And in '73, they asked me to do the logo, which I did, and that was Ken Sprague, who owned the gym at that time, and Ken Waller and Arnold. And so I did. And then in '76, Joe Gold came back to town. He owned a lot of property in Santa Monica, and he wanted to open another gym. He wanted to give Golds a run for their money, so he opened up World Gym, 2210 Main Street. And he said, "Can you do a logo for me?" I said, "What do you want?" He said, "I don't know, maybe a gorilla on the world." And so that's what I did. And so that kind of took off. So I did both, and then I had my own designs on top of that. But Joe Gold and Weider together put Golds on the map. And having Arnold there from Gratz and coming in and being as big as he was and being all over the covers with Dave Draper and Frank Zane, all those guys, it just took off and went. I mean, it was like someone set a fire and there it went.
Yeah, sometimes just the planets line up, just the right way. That's why it's so much fun to reflect on it. You were right there in the middle of it. And I thought it would be interesting for the audience to know, just instead of you just adding all these, sort of anecdotal stories to your interviews, but just to hear it directly, to get questioned on that. So I appreciate your time today, Rick.
Well, we also had Vince's gym in the Valley, Vince Geronimo.
Oh.
Vince Geronimo was like the guru of bodybuilding. He knew how to sculpt a body. And it wasn't about heavy lifting, it was about shaping.
Vince's gym on Ventura Boulevard.
Right.
Yeah.
He trained Larry Scott, Don Haworth, Bill McCardle, a bunch of guys, Clint Eastwood, Cheyenne,
Clint Walker.
Clint Walker, like I said, Clint Eastwood, all these guys. He had all the actors, and Robert Blake, of course, too. And these guys had sculpted bodies, and it was all about not squatting. He believed in sissy squats. He believed in certain things you do, certain diet, and it was basically the protein and cream diet. And the protein and cream diet worked really well. Then you had a nutritionist, Rio H. Blair, whose real name was Irving Johnson. I remember all this stuff. And Rio Blair had a house in Hollywood and a store on Western. All his supplements were there, and they were very expensive. His protein was one of the best proteins you could ever take. He wants you to mix it with cream and whip it up like a pudding and eat it. So all the greats were on that, and then he had a house with all white carpet and every wall was mirrored. He was just a weird guy. But his supplements were good, and he backed all the guys at Vince's. So you had Golds at the beach, and you had Vince's in the Valley. And then Chuck Faust was a big part of that, and Chuck's a good friend of mine. He was on the cover of all the magazines. And when I first moved here, I went out with these guys one night to this Ralph's Market right up the street. Little did I know I'd be living next to it. And they go up and down the aisles and eat everything out of the jars and put the jars back because they had no money. Funny story. Eating peanut butter and ice cream and put the jars back. I'm laughing like mad. I've never seen anybody do that in my life. So basically, Vince's gym and Gold's gym were rivals. It's like high school rivals. Although we all got along, we all knew each other, and we had different methods of training, but everybody got along. Don Peters was another guy that trained there, and we did several TV shows together. He looked great. He's passed away since. And a lot of the guys aren't here anymore, unfortunately. But both gyms it was just a different world, and it's hard to describe. If you go back in time, you guys get older, you go back to your high school, and a couple of dates and a couple of places you went, and you got the nostalgia. It's unbelievable what you feel from this. And I'm a big deal on smells and ambiance, and if I go down and I smell a certain thing at the beach and a certain aroma in the wind, I can feel myself back at Gold's again. It's a weird sensation. My father, like I said, had a store in Bakersfield. There was a department store across the street where he would always go for lunch upstairs, and they had a water fountain and an elevator operated by somebody in the boys department. So I kept having dreams about my dad not being dead. He was alive, and he kept telling, "Don't tell anybody I'm alive. Don't tell anybody." So I drove up there one day, just a dream. I walked into that department store, and this is what it has to do with this. I saw the water fountain, I saw the elevator, I smelled the air conditioning and around the back, and I said, "Oh my God, I'm 10 years old again." It smelled exactly like when I was a kid. You understand that?
Yeah. Now the brain works in a mysterious
and
ways.
if you go down to Santa Monica and you smell the ocean and you smell the fish, it might remind you of some dates you had in the past, maybe not. But it does remind you of what it was like in the 70s, and it means a lot to me because it was a huge part of my life and a part of everybody's life. And so that nostalgia of the smell and the air and the ocean breeze coming through with a little moisture in it, you can't find that anywhere.
Does it make you feel nostalgic when your friend Arnold Schwarzenegger goes through a major heart surgery here like he did last month? It kind of makes you maybe a little more aware of your mortality?
Yeah, well, 2 years ago I had congestive heart failure and pneumonia, and I lost 30 pounds, and they told me I was going to die. And I said, eventually, but not this week, I haven't got time. So I brought myself back and feeling good. Now Arnold had his surgery and he's doing fine, and I'm glad to see that. And he was the epitome of what bodybuilding is. And Dave Draper, who I spoke to last week, I got very emotional talking to him because he was one of the guys, and he was a solid guy and one of my heroes as well. And he's had some issues as well. And I hate to hear about that because it just happens with age. It's just one of those things.
Arnold is 71, I believe. Dave Draper, 76.
Yeah.
76. You're 70-something. Franco is 77. Dr. Franco Colombo is 77. All in all, you can speak, personally yourself, but collectively, you have interviewed and know more Golden Era bodybuilders than anybody on the planet. And I'm talking about elite bodybuilding.
Yeah. Years
and years of elite bodybuilding. Is that when you arrive at your golden age? Is it some plus or negative? The toll on the body. All that went into it: nutrition, supplementation, and the heavy weightlifting.
Well, I'll put it this way. I'll be 74 in July. My cardiologist told me I'm like a 30 or 40-year-old. He checked my heart, lungs, all my blood pressure is normal, my cholesterol's low, and I eat whole eggs like we always did. And he says, those don't hurt you, that's just a fallacy. So in that regard, I think it's really kept me alive and healthy. I think wrestling's played its role on my joints really bad because I do have a lot of pain and knee replacement and shoulders hurt. But I can live with it. I'm okay. I think the lifestyle has really extended my life. And I just told you, I think we had a guy in the gym yesterday who passed away. He was in his 70s, and he just started working out. He went in his car at 1 o'clock and sat down and had the AC on. They didn't find him until 8 o'clock last night, dead in the car.
Oh, jeez.
So he wasn't in any kind of shape.
But clearly, he did not have the fitness lifestyle.
No.
And so I know there are people out there, probably not too many in your audience, but friends of the members of your audience that know people that say, well, I don't want to do strength training because I don't want to have the negative consequences of my joints aching when I'm older. But at the end of the day, if you're stronger, and believe it or not, most people who strength train are more flexible, believe it, than people that don't strength train.
Absolutely.
Are you going to be a healthier look? And by the way, in case you had any doubts, there are outliers, and we all have people that we know and friends and family that have died young, and for sadly, but there is zero evidence that moderate and cycled steroid use doesn't harm anybody. In fact, there may be evidence to suggest it makes you better and stronger and live longer.
Well, when I had my congestive heart failure and came out of the hospital, my doctor put me on testosterone because I was so low. And I said, what's the chances? How many people die from this? He says, there's never any history of anybody dying from steroids.
Zero.
There's no cholesterol built up from eating fats.
Yeah.
There's, you got to get fat-free this and fat-free that. That's bullshit. It's sugar-free you want.
So here it is, folks. The bodybuilders, quietly, and this isn't getting any world attention for sure, I'm bringing it to your attention, are leading the way in not only aging well, but living longer.
Yeah, but take a look around, especially in this city. You have the Zone diet, the Beverly Hills diet, the Atkins diet, the Keto diet, all these diets. And what are they all? High protein, low carb. Where did they get the information? From the bodybuilders. The bodybuilders had it in the 40s and 50s and 60s and said, this is the way we always ate. Burger patty, cottage cheese, and eggs. This is how we ate. No carbs. So now people like these doctors, they write a book about it and they take credit for it. Oh, my new diet, the Zone diet. I just came up with this. Really? No, you stole it from the guys down at the beach.
Yeah.
And it's a fact, and there's no way you can get around that. That's exactly what it is.
Well, it continues to be studied, and those of us that are interested in the science side of things, like myself, we know that studies are just not always a very simple thing to do. If you want to study a group of people and see how their body reacts to eating high protein diet versus, but you have to clarify that. Is that coupled with a high fat diet or a high carbohydrate diet? It can't be all high, right?
Right.
So, but to study these things, and studies continue. My documentary filmmaker buddy Chris Bell is I think working very diligently on a documentary. He's the guy that made the documentary Bigger, Faster, Stronger.
Yeah.
It's quite amazing. You can find that on YouTube. And he's doing a documentary to see if a ketogenic, let me just quickly describe that. A ketogenic diet is an extreme diet, but it's extremely high in fat, about 80% fat and about 15% protein and just very, very little carbs, basically a little bit of green stuff. And what they're and so that it's too early now to know exactly how that all is going to play out. But virtually everybody who gets on a diet and begins to eat this way loses body fat and begins to see a sort of a boost in energy. Is that sustainable? I don't know.
It is if you stay with it. I had a YouTube channel on yesterday. I was looking at the guy that did Guardians of the Galaxy, the guy that started.
Chris Pratt.
Chris Pratt. You had Mark Wahlberg, The Rock.
Some of the best built guys in Hollywood.
Yeah, Christian Bale, the guy that played. He was married to. Can't think of his name. All these different guys. Oh yeah, and the guy that played. What's his name? From X-Men.
Go ahead. I'll think of it. Yeah.
All right. So they were all talking about getting ready for a movie, and they said they were training 2 hours every day, training really hard and eating, plus Stallone, and they were eating 6-7 times a day. Chicken breasts, eggs, beef, asparagus all day long. And they said it was boring as shit, but they got in really good shape. And Stallone says, I watch my diet Monday through Friday, 1,100 calories. On the weekends, I go to 3,000 calories, and it just goes right through me.
Wow.
Well, this is what we did then, too.
Wow.
There's no secret there. There's no secret at all. You train hard, and you eat that kind of a diet. The diet really works. Now, does it work for everybody? I don't know. You can't give everybody the same medicine. But if it should work unless you're cheating at night, eating stuff you shouldn't be eating. And a lot of people do that.
Arnold got his diet, I imagine, in large part from his predecessors.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy that was a decade or 10 years or so older than it was Reg Park.
Reg Park, right. Who had the same sort of diet we had.
And before him was Steve Reeves?
Steve Reeves had the same sort of diet. Everybody had the same diet. I went down to the beach in the 60s. When I first started training, I ran into some guys in Santa Monica. Santa Monica was the mecca of bodybuilding, not Venice. They had the big wooden platform. They had strength feats. They have girls posing for Miss Santa Monica. They had guys doing it for bodybuilding. And it was a completely different world, but it was all drawing huge crowds. So I see this guy standing there, two guys for number one. One guy's drinking a big quart of cream. So I said, what are you drinking? He says, cream. I said, why would you drink that? He says, well, theory is that you need the fats and protein along with your protein. So this way I don't drink milk, I drink cream. And back then, a lot of the guys would go out to eat, and I'd go with them. They go to the House of Pancakes, and they reach the creamers and drink them all.
Yeah, because about zero carbs.
Zero carbs, right? And then I asked another guy about pro wrestling. He was on the rings. I said, I think I might want to get into the business. And this is before I went in. He said, it's too hard. You don't want to do that. And then I did. So I kind of followed both routes. And I did really well in Bakersfield when I was training. I was in really good shape, but I didn't know a lot about diet. Once I moved to Venice, I learned I got in even rip shape by doing that. Now, at 73, I watch my diet, but I'm not going to compete. I don't have anything to prove, but I want to at least look good for my age. And I hear guys 40, 50, I'm falling apart, I'm getting old. I said, how do you think I'm 73? I'm still going strong, and I have a lot of injury pain. But I get in there and do it, and I try to stay the best I can be. It's not easy.
All you can do is what you can do, and it starts with showing up.
You got to show up. First thing you do in the morning, first thing you always got to do is make your bed.
Yeah,
You know why?
Because
it organizes you to start your day.
Yeah.
When your bed is made and you know that's done, you go and eat your breakfast and you start your day. You're organized from the minute you make your bed. And I learned that in the Army. That keeps you organized throughout the day. I have people tell me, "Why do I want to make my bed for? I'm just going to get back in it at night." Oh, really? Don't you want to get in a nice fresh bed that feels good?
Yeah. No. So I get up and I start the coffee, feed the dogs, and I make my bed and I get about my day. But I've got that very similar strategy that makes a huge difference in my life.
You got to be organized. And the same thing with your workout. When you go to the gym, I'm going longer than you want me to, but this is important. You need to be organized in your workout. Now, I used to always do chest and back one day, shoulders and arms the next, and legs the next. This is the way we did it in Venice. Twice a week, 6 days a week, or take a day off in the middle. Now I go in, I kind of do a flim-flam thing. I went in today and I just did arms by themselves. Yesterday I did back and chest. And then I might go just do shoulders, then I'll do legs, but I still get it in. It's just that maybe I don't want to do the 2 or 3 body parts in one session. It's hard.
I would say this, that intuitive style of training is powerful, although I would just caution people to say, make sure you've got quite a lot of training under your belt for the beginner and intermediate strength training person out there. Better to have a system to follow, but you get to your level, if you want to go ahead and trust that and instinctually train the body parts that are ready to be. Remember, we're breaking that muscle down, so they got to be ready for it.
That's right. No, I know what I'm doing. I've had routines written down in Bakersfield. I wish I still had those cards the gym burnt down, but I had all my workouts back, and then I remember doing curls with the 65s. I do like 20s today. and I get the same effect from it. It's still resistance. And you know this too. Your muscle doesn't know resistance from a weight to a band.
Right.
Or a push-up. It doesn't know. It just knows it's resistance.
Or cable or a machine.
It doesn't matter as long as you get resistance. The only difference with dumbbells is, and even Franco explained this, you have this lateral movement that you don't have on a cable, which other muscles come into play. You know, even laterals, you're trying to balance the dumbbell. That makes a difference. But I think if you hit each body part hard, every rep has to count. I see people just throwing the weights around. Every rep has to count. That's the thing with Dave Draper. He squeezed the juice out of every rep. Every rep meant something. And that's how it should be. And when you get that, then you know you've had a good workout. The resistance way coming up, negatives, whatever. Every rep has to count. You may not be doing as many sets, but it doesn't matter. Because you're still working the muscle and you're fatiguing it. And then as you know, afterwards, is when you rest is when it grows.
Yeah. And the fuel, the food.
Well, I do a post-workout drink with protein. And then I recently just started eating gummy bears, not the drugs, the gummy bears, the sugar, because you have to replace that glycogen in the muscle. I never really thought about that before.
My strategy along those same lines is I put some sugary fruit in my post-workout to supercharge getting the protein into the cells.
That's right. That's exactly what you need.
Right.
Or maybe even apple juice. Anything that has some sugar in it.
I love it. I think that's the perfect way to wrap this thing up, Rick. I appreciate getting all this great information from you.
There's so much to it, and a lot of you people write to me, and I need a routine, and what do I do for this and do for that? You know, like Dave Draper said, the secret to this is there's no secret.
Yeah.
You just got to work hard. And drugs, they have their place, but you don't need them. You can get a good body without them. If you're, don't think that that's the shortcut. All you young guys are going to go on the juice right away and say, I'm going to get big. You get big and you get pimples, and you get fat, and then you end up losing all your muscle. Got to work for it. Work hard for it. And powerlifting is a good base. It
is fantastic base, yeah. A big fan of powerlifting myself. An early mentor of mine, Dr. Fred Hatfield, ingrained in me the great benefit of powerlifting. Doesn't mean you have to go maximum lifts or compete, but it's a great place to start.
One more thing I want to add. This is about bench presses, because I was a very good bench presser. I got strong, but it didn't make my chest grow. I just read an article on that. It works the shoulders and it works the triceps, which grow from it, but the chest never really grows. The chest grows from actually working the pecs with something that moves this way.
Yes.
When you're pushing this way from the bench, it's not really working the chest. You're doing tris and shoulders. So if you get a cable crossover, if you get dumbbells and you squeeze over here, it'll work. Or if you have a pressing machine that comes together, or dumbbells that come together, then you're getting your pecs into play. But bench press itself is not going to do it. So if you're going for the 300 or 400 pound bench, it's just an ego thing to have the weight, but your chest will not get any bigger. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, perfect pro tip, as I would say, the way to wrap things up.
Yep.
Rick, it's been awesome. If anybody looking to find me and stay in touch with me, I'll just shout this out. Instagram is the best way to get a hold of me. Pete Koch, Petekoch. Hit me up, give me a like, ask me a question. Love to meet new folks. And Rick, I appreciate you.
Thanks for coming over, and thanks for having me in my house. Stay tuned now for traffic and weather in your area, because we keep an eye on that with our drones. We'll tell you when to go to work and not go to work. And if you can avoid work, don't work. Never worked a day in my life. I did everything I wanted, and it made it work for me.
And we got some of the behind the stories today. I appreciate
that. Yes, we did. And there's the phone call. This is the $1 million call. See you guys next time. Hey everyone, now you can have the Gold's Gym logo drawn by me, the artist Ric Drasin, personalized and made out to you and signed by me to frame and put on your gym wall or wherever you see fit to do so. It's a piece of bodybuilding history. It will never be duplicated again. It's the largest selling icon t-shirt logo in the world, and I'm the guy that drew it, and I will draw it for you. Just go to my website, ricdrasin.com, and order there. You can pay through PayPal, and it'll be sent out right away. And be sure to watch Rick's Corner for all the videos on bodybuilding, nutrition, fitness, pro wrestling, and anything that suits your interest as far as getting physically fit and being the best you can be from the golden era of bodybuilding.
He's the equalizer, baby. See you next time.